Good morning, coaches. I thank you so much for joining me this morning. My name is Cara. I'm your dietitian. I think I've met many of you, but there are also many of you I haven't met, or maybe you've just met me this way virtually over a screen. So thank you for joining me. I know that schedules are super busy, so I appreciate your time. I know many of you are right in the middle of season, or some of you are just ramping up for winter sports. So I appreciate you taking the time, whether you're listening live or you're going to listen to the recording. Thank you for making nutrition a priority for your team and for your athletes. This session is recorded, so if you would like to listen to it later, that's fine. I've also posted in the chat some information there. So there is a link to the slides should we have any technical difficulties or you just like them for future reference. I've also placed a few resources that I think would be really helpful, just 8.5 by 11 kind of handouts if you wanted to review them or go over them with your team. And then as well, a link to the YouTube channel where you can find the recording after this is finished. So I hope you enjoy that. Then also my information is here. I will be posting that same information again at the very end. I know sometimes when people join late, they don't have access to the chat at the very beginning. So I will be posting that again in a little while. But just so that you're aware, everyone has been muted for this session. So I would encourage you to utilize the chat box. I can't see the chat as I'm going through, but I will leave time at the end to make sure I review those chat questions so that we can get all your questions answered. I know this is a really important topic. So again, thank you for being here. Today we are going to cover performance plates. I've had a lot of questions from coaches, from graduate assistants saying like, hey, I'm in charge of pregame meals. Like, what should they be eating? Or we've been eating together and I'm just not really sure my team is eating what they're supposed to be eating. I think these are all great questions and all valid questions. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to notice and appreciate the importance of nutrition. So we're going to walk through that today and hopefully give you a lot of great information. I always like to just start with a little fun fact. So 1 in 3 athletes under fuel, which can lead to decreased performance and increased injury risk. So again, we can decrease speed, we can decrease concentration and coordination. And of course, if we decrease our recovery time, we can increase our chance for injury. So that's where that comes in. When we are not recovering properly, we can increase our risk for injury, especially if we're under fueling. And that might be something that is just, they're under fueling for their pregame meal. And so your competition outfuels you. Or it might be something like prolonged under fueling, which can lead to some more chronic issues like chronic muscle soreness and things like that. Either one will impede performance. And of course, we might see an athlete start really strong at the beginning of the game or the beginning of a training session, and then they kind of peter out at the end, and you're kind of wondering like, what the heck happened? There could be a lot of things there, but one of them definitely could be nutrition, and just asking them like, hey, I've noticed that you were really kind of sluggish at the end of practice today. Can you tell me more about that or what you think may have happened? I've found that if you use notice instead of like an accusatory kind of thing, like, what the heck, that it can be a little bit better received. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along too. So just as a base, I think it's really, really important to form a really strong foundation. So when we're talking about nutrition, focusing on the 3 meals plus 2 snacks, like make sure you're getting in enough. Some of our athletes might need 3 or 4 snacks. Some of our athletes are bigger guys and they need more fuel. Are we eating whole foods or are we kind of like nibbling all day long? Do you have a lot of color to help decrease that inflammation and to help you recover? And then if you missed my talk from September, I really recommend going back and listening to that. That whole talk was about hydration. So there's a few key tips there. One was have your athletes kind of look at their weight in pounds, divide that number by 2, and that is roughly the amount of ounces of water they should be consuming each day without sweat losses. So if we're increasing training, we're increasing our performance, it's hot, humid outside, they may need more. I did go over when Gatorade or sports drinks are needed as well. So that's a great talk. Again, they're just 20 minutes. So if you want to go back and listen, that link is in the chat to that YouTube channel and you can listen to that hydration talk there. I'm not going to touch too much on sleep today, but making sure that our athletes really are getting enough sleep. That rest and recovery is vitally important. 7 to 9 hours of sleep. That's a little bit outside of my scope, but it does tie into nutrition as well. And then next month, I'm actually going to be talking about meal timing. So today we're going to set that foundation. We've covered hydration. We're going to cover what those plates should look like so that next time we can really go into timing. I'll talk a little bit about that today, but not in depth. And if we have that base, those chunks kind of, then we can look at more sport fuel or real specific things for the athletes, but not until after that do we even look at adding supplements, which is that December talk. So we kind of like walk right through them. So I hope that you found this pretty helpful. And we're going to hop right into our performance plates. So our performance plates are kind of the goal for at least 2, likely 3 meals per day. We all have different athletes on our teams. We have teams that have, a couple people that play the whole time and a few places that never really, make the court. So is it that they're having a light training day and they're practicing really hard, so they're going to need the hard training plate most of the time, but occasionally on game days or something, they might need more of a moderate or a light training plate? Or if you have an athlete that's injured, if this is a recurring injury, they might be under fueling. So keep that in mind. If you're seeing a lot of recurring stress fractures, that's one indicator to me that we might be under fueling. Of course, it could be a training thing as well, but if we don't have enough fuel to repair, then they might be seeing those recurrent injuries. So injury plate is listed there, but please keep in mind if someone just like rolls an ankle and they're out for a week, they're still going to be on at least a moderate training plate because their muscle has not decreased. They're still burning a lot of energy and they are trying to repair, which takes building, and we don't want to underfuel at that time. So most athletes in the collegiate setting are going to fall in this moderate to hard training plate, and they might kind of wiggle between the two, but it gives you a good feel here. I've gotten a lot of questions too. Well, Cara, like how many calories should my athletes be eating? And I don't calorie count. You might be disappointed to hear that from a dietitian, but I don't think it's necessary most of the time. Sometimes it can be helpful to do it for 1 or 2 days just to get a snapshot of where you're at. But what I've found is using more of a plate method can give you just as good information without creating that over obsession with foods. So again, that training plate kind of falls into these 3 buckets. We've got protein, we've got carbohydrates, and we've got color. So those 3 buckets are the key there. And what you can see is just based on the training, we're just going to adapt the portion sizes. So a third is our moderate training plate. Half plate of carbs, quarter protein, quarter color is that hard training plate. And so when we're looking at a pregame meal, we're wanting all of our athletes to do this protein, color, carb on a hard training plate. They need to make sure that they really are fueled prior to this competition. And something else to note here is that we don't really want to be introducing new foods in the middle of season, or especially with a pregame meal. I've had a lot of coaches have really good intentions of saying like, hey, what should my athletes be eating for a pregame meal? And as much as I do try to give some great guidelines on lean protein, we'll talk through a few ideas. The other side of it is if you have an athlete that's eating like fried chicken sandwiches and French fries, telling them that they have to eat salmon, broccoli, and brown rice, they might not eat. And now that might be a key player that you have good intentions of trying to help them fuel well. However, they're not going to eat and they're not going to perform well, which again could lead to a risk of injury, and then your key player is out. So the time to work on introducing new foods or new concepts or new flavors is not in the middle of season, or maybe it is, but just not on a game day, a time where they have an opportunity to try without being committed. And especially in like the summer months or your off season training is a great time to try to expand the palate and expand some of those food options. So let's get into it. The first thing I wanted to talk about is carbohydrates. I know right now they kind of have like a the roller coaster of information. We've got people doing keto diet. We've got people thinking carbs are, evil. But actually carbs are our athlete's best friend. We have these long chains of glucose molecules that link together to form something called glycogen. So when I'm talking with athletes, I always refer to it as our choo-choo trains. It's an easy method to remember. Are your choo-choo trains full? When you go into a competition, if you're full, it's going to break off a train car, use it for energy, break off a train car, use it for energy. And if you're not all the way full, you can see how that partway through your competition, you're going to be under fueling compared to your competition, to the other team. They might be outperforming you because they came in with full train cars and you're coming in with half. So carbohydrates really are an important component. They are our main source of energy, main source of fuel. It helps with endurance. So again, you can do some quick bursts, but even the quick bursts are using carbohydrates to, like, even your quick lifts and stuff are using some carbs. So you do want a well-rounded plate and not eliminating big food groups. It helps them to compete. And then we're not going to talk a ton today about refueling. We'll talk about that when we talk about the meal timing on the next presentation in November. But again, just reminding you that those carbohydrates really are important. This is the main source of energy. So we say carbs energize. That's how they go together. So thinking about it as if you were to say something, or an athlete was to say something like, oh my gosh, Susie, she's being so good. I can't believe she had a salad with chicken on it. Wow, she's being so healthy. That actually is not the best pregame meal because you don't have any carbohydrates. So even though it appears to be healthy from our diet culture mindset, or it might be a healthy option for someone's mom, for our athletes that really do require full-on fuel, they might be under fueling. So we just look at carbohydrates. Again, athlete's best friend, energize here. So we have fast energy, which are things like your pretzels, crackers, dried fruits, applesauce squeezies, bananas kind of fall into both, and Gatorade and juices. So these are things that are going to absorb really quickly, go right into the muscles so that we can use them for energy. And these are things that, especially like 30 minutes before a competition or practice up until about 30 minutes after, where these can be really helpful. I've had some athletes say like, hey, we have 6 a.m. practice. I'm just not eating before. And this could be a great opportunity for you to say, you know what, maybe you want to try some peanut butter crackers, or maybe you want to do an applesauce squeeze and a juice at 5:30, quarter to 6, when you only have 30 minutes to digest it. We know that energy is going to get to the muscles in time and not be sitting heavy in the stomach. So roughly, again, half a plate for our pregame meal. If we have time for a pregame meal, like 3 to 4 hours before, we can use more of these complex or sustained energy sources, like a sweet potato, brown rice, whole grains. Our beans and legumes are a great option there. If you have oatmeal, that can be a great one. So these are great options, again, that can be used if you have at least kind of 4 hours to digest it. But I'm also not opposed to a pregame meal that's like, you got 3 to 4 hours, right? So we're kind of in the middle there of, should it be simple? Should it be complex? And having like pasta, right? It doesn't have to be whole grain. It can be regular pasta with the marinara sauce in your chicken, and then you're getting your color through like a green bean or something like that. So again, making sure that the closer you are to competition, the easier it should be to digest. And one of the easiest ways for me to remember that, honestly, and you can tell your athletes too, if it's easy to chew, it's easy to digest. So again, like an applesauce squeeze, whoop, down it goes into energy. However, something like beans, you kind of got to chew them a little bit more, and it does provide the energy, but we also have additional fibers and things like that, where if it is too close to competition, they might be getting stomach upset, cramping, or they might just say like, I'm feeling really heavy. We get that feeling a lot, where they're not necessarily eating the right things before the game and they start to feel heavy or sluggish. So this is just, again, like a little bit of a snapshot. But again, the closer to competition, the more simple the carbohydrates should be. So when we have those 4 hours, yes, whole grains, they help decrease inflammation. They're an awesome source of anti-inflammatory properties. So all of those are great. They help with gut health. Our whole grains really do help us with that too, and feed like our good bacteria, which is awesome. So as you're getting closer though to the competition or training, decreasing those to more simple carbohydrates. And then again, reminding them, hey, this is not all the time. You shouldn't be just snacking on goldfish all day long, right? As soon as you are done with training or practice and you have your next meal, back to the whole grains, back to the colorful carbohydrates, and a little bit more of those complex carbs will be a really good option for your athletes. We will move on to proteins. So protein is to build. This is our building blocks. So we really want to make sure that we have enough of those. Then when they're going to their strength practices, if they're in training sessions, if they're having good carbohydrates, but not a lot of protein, then we might see that they're not getting the most out of their training session, or we're not rebuilding appropriately. And again, making sure protein is included if an athlete has been injured, because this is a building block and we do want that repair. One way I remember this, and this might sound really strange, is to eat less legs. So if we think about it, like cows and our beef products or pigs and our pork products have 4 legs, right? If we can decrease that to 2, we've got chicken and turkey. Those have 2 legs. Our fish have no legs. Our beans and legumes have no legs. So the more often you can eat those leaner cuts, I think that that can be helpful. They're also usually easier to digest. So for a pregame meal, beef brisket, pulled pork might not sit well. It's kind of hard to chew, again, harder to digest, as opposed to something like a chicken sandwich with barbecue sauce. That might actually be a good option, same flavor profile, but an easier option to digest. Again, the beans and legumes, those plant-based options are really good, very great option to make sure that they're getting in not only the protein, but also some of those antioxidants and grains, which help with our prebiotics. Nuts and seeds can also be a great option for protein. They also usually have a little bit of added sugar or carbohydrate. So that, again, that can be a good option right before training. It's easy to chew, easy to digest. Milk is on here as well. And at our call last night for the athletes, I did remind them, hey guys, not all milks are created equal. So cow's milk and soy milk do have higher amounts of protein, but now the trends are almond milk, coconut milk, cashew milk, oat milk. They don't have much in it. It's kind of flavored water. So not that it can't be helpful or tasty. If they're drinking it because it tastes good, that's great. But if it's because they're trying to get in their protein, it's not hitting the mark. So if we're using it as a protein source, making sure that we are using a cow's milk or a soy milk to provide that protein option. And then eggs are great as well. So eggs, again, don't just have to be used for breakfast. Hard-boiled eggs keep in the fridge for about a week. So those can be a great option just to keep as an easy option, even for a post-workout recovery or something like that. But I was going to mention supplements. I know a lot of people say like, well, what about protein powders and stuff? I think those are fine if used correctly. So again, if you're having your 3 meals and 2 snacks or 3 snacks, you're getting enough water, you're getting enough rest. We're looking at timing. Then we can look at some additional supplements. If you are going to add in a protein powder, I always recommend something third-party tested, NSF certified, so that we know what's in it is what they say is in it. But the other thing is it can be like putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound, right? If we're not getting to the root cause of why they're not getting in enough protein, having a protein shake with just the powders is not my preferred food first approach. So if we can get it in through a food source, actually even those powders are better absorbed. So again, it can kind of top you off sort of per se, but if that's what's used as the general source of protein, you might be missing the mark there as well. On to color. Color is our protection. So if we eat a rainbow, it helps us to protect our muscles. It does reduce inflammation, which is amazing. Each color has a different key nutrient, so kind of keep that in mind. And then through our fruits and vegetables, which is our main source of color, they do have added fibers, which can help with digestion and our gut health. So I did mention a couple of times this prebiotic concept. We've heard a lot about probiotics, which is ingesting healthy bacteria. But the one thing that we need to do is feed the healthy bacteria, and that can help them replicate as well. So if we're feeding our healthy bacteria the foods that they're wanting, then it can help encourage that gut health as well. So a prebiotic is really just happy, yummy food for our good bacteria. And then the fruits and vegetables also provide a great source of water. So again, making sure that we're looking at the plates and saying like, can we see like at least 3 colors? If you look down at your plate and it's like a fried chicken sandwich with French fries and a milkshake, it's kind of tan, brown, orange. You're missing the mark. So again, is there a way that we can add in some color so that they can get all of their needs? So maybe it is a grilled chicken sandwich with some lettuce and tomato on it. They can still have their French fries, but choose a fruit cup instead. Again, adds lots of color in there. The other thing I was going to mention on this slide, since we're talking about fruits and vegetables, is that there are some vegetables that are called cruciferous vegetables or like gas-forming vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, onions, garlic. These can all cause gas and kind of create that heavy feeling for an athlete. So even just changing to things like green beans, carrots, zucchini, salad greens. Those are usually really well tolerated and don't make an athlete feel heavy. So as you're looking at planning pregame meals, if you have the choice and broccoli or green beans are offered, maybe choose the green beans. They still give you that green color that we're looking for, but doesn't cause that gas formation, so they're not feeling as heavy during competition. And the other thing I'm encouraging athletes to do is just look at different colors. So if you look at that bell pepper there, a lot of people say like, I don't really like bell peppers because they're thinking of red and greens, which are a little more spicy. But if they like carrots, most likely these athletes are going to also like yellow and orange bell peppers. Or even with our lettuce greens, people that like sweeter things might like a butter leaf or a spinach, or even a red leaf lettuce. But if you like more spicy things, you might want to be choosing an arugula. So just kind of thinking about that, just because you don't like arugula doesn't mean that you don't like greens. And so trying to find different things in each of the color groups so that you are getting that variety in there. And again, like we can look at that plate. I don't calorie count, like I said, but a lot of times I'll have athletes take pictures of their plates because I can very easily then see, did you hit your buckets? Did you hit your carbs? Did you hit your color? Did you hit your protein? And so we can do that without counting and micromanaging. We can get a really good feel for what a plate might look like. And this is an opportunity as well for you to, again, say, instead of saying like, oh, geez, like you got to put some color on your plate. Say like, hey, I kind of noticed like you weren't eating carbs. Like, can you tell me about that? Instead of doing it in front of the group and kind of being accusatory, are there ways that we can kind of pull it in, take the person off to the side and just say, hey, it looks like you're not eating a lot of color with your pregame meal. Is there something I can order for you? Or is there something we could do differently to make sure that you're getting in those different colors? Or I've noticed you haven't been eating carbohydrates with your pregame meal. Can you tell me more about that? Is there a reason? And sometimes they're saying like, hey, I just had a peanut butter sandwich before I came in. So I had plenty of carbs. I'm getting what I need. And that way you're not saying like, oh man, make sure you're putting that on your plate. It can help kind of create a little bit better relationship and not doing it in front of their peers. So last topic we can talk about is fat. And all of us have had that meal where you're like, oh my goodness, I just had like this beautiful salad with chicken and blah, 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 whatever else. And you're like, I'm just not satisfied. Like my belly is full, but I'm not satisfied. So fat can help with that satiety factor. And it also helps to reduce the inflammation when we're choosing things like omega-3s and our fatty fish. So those are really good options to do there as well. And then this kind of just ties back to, again, that kind of timeline we showed where the closer we are to competition, the less fiber, the less fat, and the less protein we need. These fats, proteins, fibers should really be used 4 hours before and then after competition. They're super important, but they do slow down the digestion. Like fat, for example, I always view it as kind of like coats the stomach. It slows down the digestion. So the food is going to be left in the belly and it's not going to be in the muscles providing that key source of energy, which is what we're looking for that pregame meal. So just a couple tools that you can use. We do have the Bite app through Sodexo. So if you are eating your pregame meal in the dining hall, or maybe even just trying to get them their rounded plates, right? When we're talking about the moderate or hard training plate, we do need them eating this most of the time. So kind of encouraging the athletes to use this app to know what the options are before they arrive. It breaks it down by station, it breaks it down by meal period and by date. So the Bite app is the app that it's on. You can see here that this little heart emblem is located there. That's our mindful emblem. So that means it's sort of a healthy choice, has lower saturated fat, has a calorie limit, has extra fiber usually. V is for vegetarian, and that's the orange logo. And then the VG is the green vegan option. And I always just kind of remember this, like vegans go a little extra, they're a little extra letter, and they're very green. So that's how I remember it. I don't know if that helps you, but I sometimes used to get them mixed up. So V is vegetarian and the VG is for vegan options. If we use this just to practice, I just pulled a separate menu just because it was easy to see the differences, but we can easily fill this plate, right? So we've got our quarter plate of protein, quarter plate of carb, half plate of carb, quarter plate of color, and we can just fill them in. So if you have a pork tenderloin, loin is a lean cut, so that is going to be a little easier to digest, easier to chew, not as much saturated fat. So that would be a great option for your pregame meal. So you put in the pork tenderloin, in that quarter plate of protein, we have brown rice, and then they like, yeah, carb, I can't eat like a half a plate of brown rice. No problem. Have a quarter plate of brown rice to hit your carb bucket, but also maybe add in a yogurt parfait, or maybe you're gonna, excuse me, add in a dinner roll. Or maybe you're going to add in, a dessert, or maybe you're going to add in some extra fruit or something. There's lots of ways to hit that carbohydrate bucket. It doesn't have to be from all one, like rice. And then we have the roasted vegetables. So that hits our color bucket. And so again, kind of looking at this, that roasted zucchini, the roasted vegetables is a great option for a pregame meal. But we have a lot of athletes that are like, yeah, I don't really like zucchini. Okay, great. You don't have to have it. Is there a way we can have a side salad? Is there a way we can have a cup of fruit, like cut fruit? Maybe you want to have a banana with some peanut butter on it, and that can hit that color bucket as well. So again, realizing that these can be mixed and matched to meet your different needs. And I always just try to remember too, don't forget your water. Don't forget your beverages. So that's not listed on here, but you want to make sure that you are properly hydrated prior to competition. I did want to mention the Simply to Go. We have these at a lot of the accounts as well. And so, for example, we have some athletes that have said like, hey, Car, I got like a 2 p.m. practice. Like, what should I be eating for lunch? Because I don't get out of class till 11:50. So I don't have that like 3 hours. And so maybe they want to swing by this STG area on campus, grab a to-go peanut butter and jelly sandwich, maybe a fruit cup and a side salad or something like that. And that again hits those buckets, right? Because we've got the bread and the fruit for our carbs. We've got a little bit of peanut butter, but again, closer to competition, the easier to chew, the easier to digest, right? So peanut butter sandwich sort of melts in your mouth. It's going to sit fine and be ready for energy when you get to that competition. So don't forget about these options. A lot of times it's easy to just grab and go. We do have the beverages there as well. So that can be, again, an easy option. Either if you're like loading the bus and headed out, they can grab an option as long as you have a cooler bag or something. Maybe you got one of those big roller coolers they can take on the bus. Or something shelf stable like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is an easy option for a grab and go there. So let's just go through a couple examples, and then I'll make sure we have plenty of time for questions. So the sandwich shop is a good option here. So we've got the bread, which is a carbohydrate, and some sort of pretzels or baked chip, which again is a carb. We've got our fruit, which is a carb, but we're counting it as a color. And then the protein is from the meat on the sandwich. Ideally, they're putting some veggies on their sandwich as well, right? So that again is an easy pregame meal, but we can't just have a sandwich with, side salad. It's not enough carbohydrates. So having a baked chip or a pretzel is a good way to get in those extra carbs, or for sure adding in a fruit cup if it's available. Maybe you just want to have some apples and oranges on the bus. So it's not actually from the shop, but you've still got them. Another one might be like a burrito bowl or Chipotle or something. Sometimes the spicy stuff doesn't go as well for a pregame meal, but it might be a great post-game meal, and you can still use this kind of circle to portion your plate. So you've got a lot of rice there, which can be a good option for your carbohydrates. And especially if it's after the game, make it brown rice, right? Maybe we're going to add in some extra beans and some chicken. So we've got the lean protein and a good plant-based protein carb bean option. And then adding in lots of color. So again, having the lettuce, the pico, things like that. And then your healthy fats could come from something like a guacamole. But there's ways to make a really healthy bowl that can meet this performance plate as well. Maybe just one more. I talked a little bit about the pasta, but we could do that one too, right? So if you've got pasta, that would be your carb, and a bread basket or something, more carb. Then you've got your chicken with maybe a marinara sauce or something over top of it, even a meatball, right? That's a good, easy to chew, easy to go option that has a little bit more saturated fat, but for a pregame meal, it would be pretty well tolerated. And then making sure they do get some color. So maybe that means having some of their favorite salad dressings because they don't like Caesar. Okay, it doesn't matter. If they love ranch, let them have it, right? They're working out, they're getting in their color, so we don't want to deter them and say they can only have a balsamic vinaigrette, right? If we know they're going to eat their lettuce greens and their color by having a different kind of dressing, let them have it. We can work on different dressings and different seasonings in the off season, but during season, you really need them to fuel properly. So I hope you had enjoyed this. I hope you learned some things. The next talk is going to be, again, the first Wednesday of the month, which is November 3rd, this next month. And it's going to be on snack and meal timing. So I'm going to give more examples of those kind of timelines and when you should be having what a refuel looks like. You can get the QR code here. I also have it as an 8.5 by 11 if anyone wants those to kind of post around the coaches' rooms or maybe in the locker room. That's totally fine. I can email those to you. You can print them off, or you can click the link in the email invitation, which hopefully you all have now. Again, if you need any of that, please let me know. My contact information is at the bottom here. And I am going to hop off of my screen share so that I can see if we've got any questions. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I am going to post this, the resources information. I have a performance enhancing plate, how to build a performance plate, and grocery shopping tips, as well as a copy of the slides and the link to the YouTube channel, so that hopefully if you missed my hydration talk, or if maybe you had to kind of hop in and out because of meetings today, you'll be able to listen to this session as well. Does anyone have any questions? I know you all are very busy, and so I'm going to actually just hang on the line for a little bit. So if you have questions, feel free to type them in. I think if you request to be unmuted, I can do that too if you just want to ask the question. But thank you all for attending, and I appreciate your time, and I hope to see you all next month. Have a great day.